In this video, we are going to look at the February real estate numbers for the city of Hamilton, and we're going to look at both a year-over-year comparison as well as month-over-month, because it's interesting to see that the two comparisons are telling very different stories right now. Now, as we look at these numbers, keep in mind that last February was basically the peak of the market. So we're going to see things like sales, listings, and especially price down a considerable amount when we look at year over year. And a lot of these stats or numbers are going to be what the news headlines are reporting on now and for the next couple of weeks. So before we jump into the numbers here, if you like this kind of content or you get any value of this, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to our channel to stay up to date on all things real estate. Now we're going to start by looking at the year over year numbers for the city of Hamilton. And like I mentioned, you're going to see some pretty significant changes here because we're talking about basically the month that was the peak of the market compared to 12 months later after 8 rate increases from the Bank of Canada. So looking at some key metrics here, the first is sales. You can see we're down about 40% year over year, and new listings followed closely behind that, down 30% from last February to this February. Interestingly enough, we're seeing active listings, so the inventory that's sitting out there, up over 100%. And the reason being is because, one, the absorption rate is lower now, as you see from sales to new listings, but also there's a lot of homes that were overpriced as the market was falling down, and they were late to change their prices, and as a result, they've been sitting on the market for long periods of time, and that's what a lot of that inventory is made up from. Now, the next one here is the big one, and that is average price. You can see this is down 22% year over year from last February to this February, and this is pretty consistent in the GTA, especially when you're looking at Hamilton, Burlington, Oakville area. And finally, we look at months of inventory. Always like to look at this stat as it tells us what type of market we're in right now. So last February, we were in a very strong seller's market. We had half a month of inventory, which is just insane. And this February, we had just over 2 months of inventory. So although some people might think we're in a balanced market right now, we're actually still statistically in a seller's market, and we're definitely feeling that on a day-to-day basis. So the next thing we're looking at here is the month-over-month stats for Hamilton. So from January to February of this year, sales were up roughly 30%. New listings were up 10%. So still have a little bit of a lack of inventory, and that is not picking up as quickly as sales are. You can see active listings were pretty stable, up just 3%. And then the interesting thing here, this is something we haven't seen in about 12 months, is average price is up 3% from January to February. And a large part of why we're seeing this is because sales are starting to pick up, and we're starting to feel more of a natural spring market as we move into the warmer months here. So you can see sales were up 30%, but the inventory is not quite there for the level of demands we're seeing still. So new listings were only up 10%, which doesn't compare to the 30% increase we saw in sales. And so we are starting to see things like multiple offers, especially when you look at detached homes in these areas. And as a result, the average price is starting to climb up a little bit, in this case by roughly 3%. And finally, months of inventory, painting the same picture that we just talked about. So moving from closer to 3 months of inventory towards that 2 months of inventory. So moving from closer to a balanced market into more of a seller's market. And again, that's what we're feeling on a daily basis as we enter the spring market. Now, next, we're going to look at the average price in Hamilton, and this is broken down by property type. So the average price we were looking at on the last 2 slides is a composite number of all of the sales in the city of Hamilton. And this is a breakdown of the property type, so detached townhomes or condos. This is year over year, so it's going to show very similar numbers when compared to the peak. So detached homes were down 24%, which is the largest out of the property types. Townhomes down 14%, and condos down just 6%. And a large reason why we're seeing this is because when the prices were climbing, it was during COVID, and people didn't want to be locked inside, and most people weren't looking at condos. They were hoping to get into townhomes, or if they could, detached homes. So those categories of properties saw the largest increase when prices were going up. And as prices come down as such, they also saw the largest decreases. And finally, looking at month over month for the same property types. So starting with detached homes, the average price was up 3% from January to February. Townhomes up about 1%, so pretty stable there. And condos were the only property type that saw prices continue to fall from January to February, but they're pretty stable. We're talking about $4,000 here or a decrease of 1%. Now, all in all, I think the month over month numbers are really interesting here. Obviously, it's important to look at year over year to see where we've come from last year, but month over month tells us a little bit more about where we are right now and where we're actually going. And as someone that works in the market on a daily basis, we can definitely feel the demand and consumer confidence picking up again. The Bank of Canada just held their rates and they're hoping to hold them for the short term. And we're starting to see demand as we enter the spring months. It starts to get a little warmer out. And this is something we typically see in a normal spring market. So that's it for this video. If you'd like to receive these slides or if you'd like to know more information about your specific area, all of our contact info is down below. Please let us know. We're happy to help. Have a great day and we'll talk to you soon.